Spencer, we are spotlighting Tysheem Johnson to a certain extent because he's the most recent. But when you look over all the additions, is there anybody in particular or two or three that in particular intrigue you?
Yeah, they've added, I think, 9 or 10 players at this point, and you look at them and say, boy, it kind of seems like at least 7 are going to be starters, and all of them will contribute heavily in some fashion to the 2023 team, which is kind of what the transfer portal is for and what the best teams in the country have really used it for, or at least the ones that have adjudicated it most effectively to this point. Jordan Burch is the guy who could have the biggest impact for the Ducks. Comes over from South Carolina, where he was solid for 2 years. He was nothing special, but coming out of high school, there was an expectation he would be special. He was their highest rated recruit since Jadeveon Clowney all the way back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, whenever he committed to the Gamecocks. And there was a lot of hype around Jordan Burch. He was a 5-star recruit, top 10 player in his class in the year 2020. And he was pretty good this year. I think he had 7.5 tackles for loss, 50 some odd tackles, and 3.5 sacks, which by most accounts for a college football player is a solid contributing season. But the expectation was higher, and Dan Lanning recruited him to Georgia when he was the defensive coordinator there, gets him out of the portal, and edge is probably the biggest position of need from the Ducks coming off of their 2022 season. And that's a sort of addition that you're hoping he'll kind of do a Bo Nix, essentially. He showed glimpses of his full potential at an SEC school, but now you want him to really maximize it. That's what happened with Bo Nix, a quarterback this year. Hopefully he'll be able to repeat that success in 2023, but Oregon needs that to happen with Jordan Burch. They had a historically bad year rushing the passer, whether you're looking at pressure rate or sack numbers. They just couldn't do it enough, and they asked too much of their secondary, which they've revamped in a number of ways as well. And I think that that's a guy who you're looking at as hopefully is the most impactful transfer. But there are a lot of other names in there who are going to be regular players. You lose Dante Thornton to Tennessee, you add Trayshawn Holden at the wide receiver position from Alabama. I think that's a guy with really big physical body type. I know people don't say this about receivers a lot, but I'm interested to see what he can bring in the run game from a blocking perspective. People always undervalue wide receivers blocking, but no big play has ever been sprung without a good block from a wide receiver. That's just the way that it goes because you got so many guys back there in the secondary and whatnot. But Justin Jacobs, linebacker from Iowa, another guy that I think is probably a day one starter and has a really, he's the most intriguing is one word, questionable is another, because he hasn't played a lot of football. But Iowa, which we all know loves their defense, thought he was going to be a starter coming into this year. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He only played in 2 games, got knocked out with an injury. Now he's coming to Oregon. But they had a lot of high hopes for him over there. And Oregon has high hopes for him, replacing Noah Sewell and Justin Flo and upgrading the linebacker position overall in terms of production this year. But it is a question mark of, okay, well, we know what we think this guy can be, but do we know what he's actually going to be? Whereas other transfers, okay, it's plug and play. You know what you're going to get from him. You have a reasonable expectation. I think Jacobs is kind of the biggest wild card in that sense.